It was about 2 years ago when I first listed my basement on Airbnb. Nothing fancy at all, just a finished basement with its own entrance from the side of the house. It has a decent-sized bedroom area, a small bathroom with a shower stall, and I even put in one of those mini fridges and a microwave on a little table. There's no kitchen or anything, but for the price I was charging, people seemed happy enough. Mostly it was travelers passing through our area. I live about an hour outside of Portland, sometimes people visiting family who needed their own space, that kind of thing. I've never had any real problems with guests. Sure, sometimes they'd leave it a bit messy or forget something in the fridge. Normal stuff, nothing that ever made me feel like this. Everything was going fine until late January this year. I had a string of bookings through the holidays, but then things dried up. January and February are always slow around here, so I wasn't too worried. I figured I'd use the downtime to do some maintenance, maybe paint the bathroom, replace some of the older towels, spruce it up a bit for the spring bookings. The last guest I had checked out on January 12th. Nice older lady who was visiting her daughter for a week, left the place pretty clean. I went down that day to strip the bed and grab the towels for laundry, but I didn't do a deep clean since I was expecting another booking soon. But then, nothing. No bookings came in for almost 6 weeks. By the end of February, I was getting a little concerned about the extra income I was missing, so I decided to lower my prices a bit for March. That's when I realized I should probably go down and do a thorough cleaning, air the place out, make sure everything was ready for potential guests. I remember it was a Tuesday afternoon. I had the day off work, so I gathered up my cleaning supplies and headed to the basement. I usually access it from inside my house, through the door in my kitchen that leads to the stairs, even though guests use the outside entrance. When I opened the door, the light was on. I stood frozen at the top of the stairs, just staring down. I know I hadn't been down there since mid-January, and that lady definitely turned off all the lights before she left. She was almost obsessive about saving electricity, had mentioned it several times during her stay. But the light was on. The overhead light in the main room was definitely on. Maybe I had gone down at some point and forgotten. Maybe there was an electrical issue. I told myself not to be ridiculous as I walked down the stairs carrying my bucket of cleaning supplies, but I felt uneasy. When I reached the bottom of the stairs and could see the whole room, I stopped again. Everything looked clean, really clean, like cleaner than I had left it. The bed was made, but not the way I usually make it. I always tuck the comforter under the pillows, hotel style. This was made with the comforter folded down and the pillows placed on top. It looked lived in, recently lived in. I set down my cleaning supplies and walked over to the mini fridge, my heart starting to pound in my chest. I opened it, expecting it to be empty. It wasn't empty. There was a half-gallon of milk, a package of sliced cheese, some apples, a container of yogurt, a 6-pack of beer with 2 bottles missing. I slammed the fridge door shut and backed away from it. My mind was racing. Had I accidentally booked someone without realizing it? Had the previous guest somehow never checked out in the system? I pulled out my phone with shaking hands and checked my Airbnb account. No active bookings. The last guest had definitely checked out on January 12th. The calendar showed the space as available for the past 6 weeks. Someone had been living in my basement, coming and going without my knowledge. I looked around the room more carefully now, noticing other small details. A phone charger plugged into the wall that wasn't mine. A different brand of soap in the bathroom than what I provide. A small stack of books on the nightstand that I definitely didn't own. The worst part? The outside entrance to the basement has a keypad lock that I change the code for with each new guest. After a guest checks out, I usually reset it to my default code until the next booking. Had someone figured out the code? Had the previous guest shared it with someone? Or had someone been living down here even when I had paying guests? I felt sick to my stomach as I looked at the slightly rumpled pillow on the bed. Someone had been sleeping there. Maybe just last night. Maybe they'd come back tonight, using a key I didn't know they had, entering my property without my knowledge or permission. I quickly went back upstairs, locked the door to the basement, and called the police. When the officers arrived about 20 minutes later, I led them down to the basement and showed them what I'd found. They looked around, took some notes, but ultimately didn't seem very concerned. "No signs of forced entry?" one of them asked, examining the door to the outside. "No, but they must have gotten the code somehow," I said. "Any items missing from your residence?" the other officer asked. "No, not that I've noticed. They've been living here." I gestured to the food in the fridge, the personal belongings scattered around. The officers exchanged a look that made me feel like they thought I was overreacting. "Could it be a friend or family member using the space without telling you?" one suggested. I shook my head vigorously. "Absolutely not. I live alone, and nobody has a key to my house or knows the basement door code except me." They took down the information and said they'd file a report, but I could tell they weren't taking it very seriously. Before they left, one officer suggested I change the access code and maybe get some cameras installed. They took the few personal items that had been left behind as evidence, but I wasn't hopeful anything would come of it. After they left, I immediately changed the code on the outside door. I threw away all the food in the mini fridge and stripped the bed completely. I spent the next 3 hours cleaning every surface in that basement, trying to remove any trace of whoever had been staying there. But I couldn't shake the feeling of violation, the knowledge that while I'd been sleeping upstairs, someone had been living below me, entering and exiting my property at will. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing noises, imagining footsteps outside, someone trying the basement door and finding that their code no longer worked. Would they try to break in? Did they know I had discovered them? I put a chair against my bedroom door and kept my phone right next to me, ready to call 911. The next day, I went out and bought 2 security cameras, one for the outside entrance to the basement and another for the inside of the basement itself. I also got a new, better deadbolt for the door at the top of the stairs that connects the basement to my kitchen. For a few days, nothing happened. The cameras didn't pick up anything unusual, and I was starting to think that maybe whoever it was had realized they'd been discovered and had moved on. Then, exactly 1 week after I'd discovered the situation, I got a booking request on Airbnb. A user named Alex wanted to rent the basement for 1 night. The profile had no reviews and had been created that same day. My hand hovered over the decline button, but then I hesitated. What if this was them? What if this was how they were trying to get back in? Against my better judgment, I accepted the booking, but changed the door code to something completely different than my usual pattern. I messaged Alex with the new code, check-in instructions, and a casual mention that I'd recently installed security cameras for everyone's safety. The day of the booking came, and I watched the cameras like a hawk. Check-in time was 3 p.m., but no one showed up. By midnight, there was still no sign of Alex and no message explaining the no-show. The next morning, I went down to the basement, half expecting to find someone had somehow gotten in despite the cameras and new code. The basement was empty, untouched, but I had one notification on my Airbnb app. Alex had canceled the reservation late last night after check-in time had passed. The cancellation reason: change of plans. I felt a chill run down my spine. They had known I was on to them. They had tried to get back in legitimately, and when I mentioned the cameras, they'd backed off. But that meant they were still out there, and they still wanted to get back into my basement. For the next few weeks, I was jumpy and anxious all the time. I kept reviewing the camera footage multiple times a day, installed motion sensor lights around the outside of my house, and even considered selling the place and moving. Then, about 3 weeks after my discovery, as I was reviewing the previous night's camera footage before leaving for work, I saw something that made my blood run cold. At 2:17 a.m., a figure had approached the basement door. They were wearing a hoodie pulled low over their face, making it impossible to identify them. They stood there for almost a full minute, not doing anything, just looking at the door. Then they reached out, not toward the keypad, but toward the small gap between the door and the frame, as if testing it. After a few seconds, they turned and walked away, disappearing into the darkness beyond the motion light's range. They were coming back. They were checking for weaknesses. They weren't done with my basement. Or maybe they weren't done with me. I called in sick to work that day and spent hours going through all my previous camera footage, looking for anything I might have missed. And that's when I noticed something else strange, something I hadn't paid attention to before. On several occasions, very late at night or very early in the morning, the same car would drive slowly past my house. It never stopped, just cruised by at about 10 mph, much slower than the normal traffic on my street. I couldn't make out the driver, and the vehicle was a common-looking dark sedan, nothing distinctive. But it had driven by at 2:11 a.m. on the same night the hooded figure had approached my basement door, 6 minutes before the person had shown up. Were they watching me? Studying my patterns? Waiting for the right moment to what? I didn't know what they wanted, and that was perhaps the most terrifying part of all this. I decided I needed more information. That night, I set up an additional camera inside my car, pointing it toward the street to try and catch the license plate of the slow-moving vehicle if it came by again. Around 3 a.m., I was awakened by the notification sound from my security camera app. Heart pounding, I grabbed my phone. The basement door camera had detected movement. I pulled up the live feed with trembling fingers. There was the hooded figure again. But this time, they were doing something different. They were leaving something at the door. I watched, hardly daring to breathe, as they placed what looked like a small package on the ground, then quickly walked away. I waited until morning, checking the other cameras to make sure they had truly left and weren't lurking somewhere around my property. When daylight came, I cautiously went outside and approached the basement entrance. There on the ground was a small cardboard box about the size of a deck of cards. No address, no markings, just plain cardboard sealed with clear tape. I picked it up carefully. It was light and nothing shifted inside when I tilted it. Back in my kitchen, I placed it on the counter and stared at it. Should I call the police? They hadn't been much help before. Should I open it? What if it was something dangerous? Curiosity and fear battled inside me, and finally curiosity won. Using a knife, I carefully cut through the tape and opened the box. Inside was a single key, old brass, slightly tarnished, and a small piece of paper with 5 words written in neat block letters. You know what this opens, but I didn't. I had no idea what this key was for. None of the doors in my house used keys like this. They all had more modern locks. Unless it was for something in the basement, something I didn't know about. The thought sent a wave of nausea through me. Had there been something hidden in my basement all this time? Something this stranger knew about, but I didn't? I looked at the key again, turning it over in my hand. It looked familiar somehow, but I couldn't place it. Like I'd seen it before, long ago. That's when I remembered. When I first bought this house 5 years ago, the previous owners had given me a ring with several old keys on it. Just in case, they'd said. There might be some old locks around the place we've forgotten about. I'd tossed that ring of keys into a drawer in my home office and forgotten all about it. With shaking hands, I went to find that ring of keys. It took some digging, but eventually I found it buried under a stack of old warranties and instruction manuals. I held up the mystery key next to each key on the ring, comparing them. None matched exactly, but one was very, very similar. Almost identical, except the mystery key looked newer, less worn. It was a copy. Someone had made a copy of one of my old keys. But which lock did it open? I spent the rest of that day going around my house, trying the original key in every lock I could find. Nothing in the main house matched. Finally, I went down to the basement, my heart racing as I methodically tried every cabinet, closet, and storage space. Nothing. Until I reached the small utility closet in the corner of the basement bathroom. I'd always assumed it was just an access point for the water heater and some pipes, I'd opened it before when I first moved in, found nothing of interest, and never really looked at it again. The key slid into the lock smoothly, and with a soft click, it turned. I pulled open the door, expecting to see just the water heater and some plumbing. Instead, I found another door. A small wooden door at the back of the closet, partially hidden behind the water heater. It couldn't have been more than 4 feet tall. Someone would have to crouch to go through it. A door I had never noticed before, a door I had never opened. The old key fit this lock too. My hand froze on the key. Did I really want to see what was on the other side? Did I want to know where this strange person had been going? But I had to know. The not knowing was driving me insane. I turned the key, heard another soft click, and slowly pulled open the small wooden door. Beyond it was darkness. I used my phone's flashlight to peer inside. It was a small, crawl space-like area, but it wasn't just rough concrete or dirt like you might expect. The floor was covered with worn carpet scraps. There were shelves mounted on the walls, holding small items I couldn't quite make out from the doorway. It was a room, a hidden room that someone had been using. In my house. I couldn't bring myself to crawl inside. Not then, not alone. I locked both doors, went back upstairs, and finally called a friend to come over. I needed someone else to see this, to confirm I wasn't losing my mind. While waiting for my friend to arrive, I sat at my kitchen table staring at that mysterious key and the note. You know what this opens. They wanted me to find that room. But why? What was I supposed to see in there? I didn't have to wait long to find out. But I wish more than anything that I'd sold this house and moved away while I had the chance. Because what I found in that hidden room changed everything, and now I know I'm not dealing with some random squatter. This is personal, very personal, and I'm afraid it's only just beginning. My friend Mike arrived about 30 minutes later. I was still sitting at the kitchen table, just staring at that key. He could tell something was seriously wrong the moment he saw my face. Dude, you look like you've seen a ghost, he said as he came in. I almost laughed because whatever this was, it wasn't supernatural. It was all too real, too human. I need to show you something, I said, my voice sounding strange even to my own ears. Downstairs. I led him to the basement, explaining everything as we went. The mysterious occupant, the police visit, the cameras, the hooded figure, and finally, the key and the hidden door. Mike listened without interrupting, his expression growing more concerned with each detail. When we reached the utility closet, I hesitated, my hand shaking as I inserted the key into the lock of the small door behind the water heater. Are you sure about this? Mike asked, looking skeptical and a little nervous. I wasn't sure, not at all. But I nodded anyway and turned the key. The small door creaked open, and I shined my flashlight inside. Mike crouched down beside me, peering into the darkness. What the hell? He whispered. The space was bigger than it had first appeared, extending maybe 10 feet back. Someone had furnished it in a disturbing, makeshift way. There was a thin camping mattress on the floor, a small battery-powered lamp, and those shelves I'd glimpsed earlier. But what made my stomach turn were the walls. Every inch was covered with papers, printouts, photos, notes, all carefully arranged and connected with red string, like something from a detective show. And all of it was about me. There were screenshots of my social media profiles, printouts of my Airbnb listing, photos of my house taken from the street, photos of me entering my car, checking my mail, walking the neighborhood, photos I had no idea anyone had taken. Oh my God, Mike whispered, reaching out to touch one of the papers. It was a printout of my work schedule from the last 3 months. How did they get this? I asked, my voice barely audible. My schedule wasn't online. It was something only my workplace would have. But the center of this disturbing collage was what made my blood freeze. A large printed photo of a family, my family, from 20 years ago. Me as a teenager, my parents, and a young woman I recognized as a distant cousin who had stayed with us one summer. Across her face was a large red X. Below the photo, a handwritten note. They forgot. I didn't. "Do you know what this means?" Mike asked, his voice hushed and serious. I shook my head slowly, trying to make sense of it. The cousin in the photo, Sarah. I barely remembered her. She'd stayed with us for, 3 months? When I was maybe 16? I hadn't thought about her in years. "We need to call the police, now," Mike said, pulling out his phone. As he dialed, I noticed something else. A small calendar pinned to one corner of the wall, with dates circled in red. The next circled date was tomorrow. While Mike talked to the dispatcher, I took photos of everything with my phone, trying to capture every detail of this shrine to whatever this was. Revenge? Obsession? I didn't understand. But the knot in my stomach told me it was dangerous. The police arrived faster this time, taking the whole situation much more seriously. They documented everything, took statements, and promised to post a patrol car near my house overnight. "Do you have somewhere else you can stay?" one officer asked me. I nodded, already planning to crash at Mike's place. "We'll try to locate this Sarah person," the officer continued. "But in the meantime, don't come back here alone." That night, at Mike's apartment, I couldn't sleep. I kept checking my security camera feeds on my phone, expecting to see that hooded figure return. But the night passed quietly, too quietly. The next morning, the date circled on that calendar. I woke to a text from an unknown number. It contained just 4 words that made my heart stop. "I'm coming home today." I stared at my phone, reading those 4 words over and over. "I'm coming home today." My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the device. Mike was in the shower, and I didn't want to wait. I called the police officer who had given me his card the night before. "Officer Davis," he answered on the second ring. It's me from last night, the basement situation," I managed to say. "I just got a text from them." I read him the message and explained about the unknown number. He asked me to screenshot it and email it to him right away, which I did while we were still on the phone. "Don't delete anything," he instructed. "We can try to trace this. But honestly, these days, it's pretty easy to send untraceable texts." "What should I do?" I asked, hating how small my voice sounded. "Stay where you are. Don't go back to your house alone. We're working on identifying this Sarah person from the photo. Have you remembered anything else about her?" I closed my eyes, trying to think back nearly 20 years, to that summer when Sarah had stayed with us. What had happened? Why had she come to stay with us in the first place? I think there was some trouble with her parents, I said slowly, memories starting to surface. My mom and her mom were cousins. I remember there was some kind of family drama. Sarah was difficult, angry all the time. I think she got in trouble at school. I trailed off, the memories fragmentary and distant. "Anything else? How long did she stay? Why did she leave?" 3 months, maybe? Over the summer break? I was 16, so she would have been 14? I honestly don't remember why she left. I just remember being relieved when she was gone. Mike came out of the bathroom then, and I quickly explained what was happening. His face grew serious as he listened. "You can't go back there," he said firmly, but I was already shaking my head. "I have to. I need to know who this is, what they want." The police said they'd meet me at my house at noon. Mike insisted on coming along. Thank God. I don't think I could have done it alone. When we pulled up to my house, everything looked normal. No strange cars, no sign of disturbance. 2 police cruisers were parked outside. Officer Davis and his partner waiting for us. "We've had someone watching the house since we left last night," he informed me. "No one has approached it." We went inside, cautiously. Nothing seemed out of place in the main house. Then we headed down to the basement, my stomach churning with each step. The moment I opened the door at the top of the stairs, I knew something was wrong. The light was on again, just like that first day. "Did you leave this on?" Mike whispered beside me. I shook my head, my throat too dry to speak. Officer Davis drew his weapon, motioning for us to stay back as he and his partner descended the stairs first. "Clear," he called after a tense minute. The basement looked different. The bed was made again, but not the way I'd left it. There was a suitcase beside it, open, with clothes neatly folded inside. Women's clothes. I approached the mini fridge with a sense of déjà vu, dreading what I'd find inside. Fresh food again, but different items this time. Almond milk, organic yogurt, a container of cut fruit. "Check the hidden room," I said to the officers, my voice barely above a whisper. We went to the utility closet, opened the small door behind the water heater, and shined flashlights inside. The room was empty. All the photos, the papers, the disturbing shrine, gone, without a trace, like it had never existed. "What the hell?" Mike murmured beside me. One of the officers got a call on his radio and stepped away to answer it. When he returned, his expression was grim. "We got a hit on that name, Sarah Kelly," he said. "Your cousin." I nodded, waiting for him to continue. "She died 12 years ago, suicide." The world seemed to tilt around me. None of this made sense. If Sarah was dead, then who? The officer wasn't done. "But here's the thing. She had a daughter. The daughter would be about 24 now." A cold realization began to dawn on me, making my skin crawl. What was the daughter's name?" I asked, though somehow I already knew the answer. "Alexandra," he replied. "Goes by Alex. Alex, the name on the Airbnb booking request." That's when we heard it. The unmistakable sound of the side door opening, the entrance to the basement from outside. Someone had just come in, using their key. Someone was coming home. It started about a month ago. I was just getting home from work. It was a Tuesday, I remember, because I had to work late to finish this stupid report my boss wanted. I live in this apartment complex on the 3rd floor. Nothing fancy, just one of those generic places with beige walls and thin doors that you can hear everything through. Been living there for about 2 years now. Anyway, I was walking up the stairs, already thinking about what I was gonna have for dinner. Probably just some frozen pizza or whatever. When I got to my door, there was this package sitting there. Not a big one. Maybe the size of a shoebox, wrapped in brown paper. No delivery slip stuck to my door or anything. At first I thought, maybe it was something I ordered online and forgot about. I do that sometimes. Order random stuff on Amazon when I'm bored and then forget about it. But when I picked it up, there was no return address. No shipping label from Amazon or FedEx or anything. Just my name and address written in black marker. Really neat handwriting, like someone took their time with it. The weird thing was, and I didn't really think about this until later, but my name was spelled perfectly. Not just my first and last name, but my middle initial too. And I never use my middle initial for anything, like ever. I don't even put it on my mail or when I sign up for stuff online. But there it was. J. Michael Rodriguez, written in this careful, almost fancy handwriting. I stood there in the hallway for a minute, just staring at it. Mrs. Chen from 3B came out to get her mail and gave me this look like I was blocking the way or something. So I just grabbed my keys and went inside. I set the package on my kitchen counter and stared at it for a while. I know that sounds stupid, but something about it felt off. Not scary exactly, just wrong somehow. Like when you come home and something's been moved, but you can't figure out what. I made myself a sandwich first, turkey and cheese, nothing special. Kept glancing over at the package while I ate. The brown paper looked old, not like the stuff they use at the post office. More like the kind of paper they use to wrap things in old movies or something. And the tape holding it together was that clear packing tape, but it was applied really carefully. No wrinkles or bubbles. After I finished eating, I couldn't stand it anymore. I mean, it had my name on it, right? And my address. so it was obviously meant for me, even if I didn't remember ordering anything. I got a knife from the drawer and carefully cut along the tape. I don't know why I was being so careful with it. Usually I just rip packages open, but something made me want to preserve it, I guess, like it was important somehow. Inside was another box. One of those white cardboard boxes like you get at the post office. This one had a piece of paper taped to the top. Just a regular piece of white paper folded in half. I opened it up, and there were 4 words written in the same neat handwriting as the address. Develop me. Thank you. That was it. No signature, no explanation, just those 4 words. Under the note was tissue paper, the kind they put in gift boxes. I unwrapped it slowly, and inside was a disposable camera. You know the kind, those cheap yellow Kodak ones they used to sell at gas stations before everyone had phones with cameras. I hadn't seen one of those in years. I picked it up and turned it over in my hands. It felt used, like someone had been handling it a lot. The plastic was a little worn around the edges, and there were these tiny scratches on the back. When I looked through the little viewfinder window, it was all black, obviously, but I could hear the film mechanism when I turned the wheel to advance it. The counter on the back said 27. So, whoever sent this had taken 27 pictures and wanted me to develop them. But why? And why me? I checked the box again, thinking maybe there was another note or something that explained it, but there was nothing. Just the camera and that weird little message. I sat on my couch for probably an hour, just holding the camera and trying to figure out what to do. Part of me wanted to just throw it away. I mean, it was obviously some kind of mistake or prank or something. But the other part of me was curious, I guess. Like when you find someone's phone and you want to look through their photos, even though you know you shouldn't. The note said, "Thank you," like whoever sent it was grateful that I was going to develop the pictures. That stuck with me for some reason. Like they were counting on me to do it. Like they needed me to see whatever was on that film. I decided to sleep on it. Put the camera on my nightstand and tried to watch some TV to get my mind off it. But I kept looking over at it. This little yellow rectangle just sitting there. Every time I glanced at it, I could swear the shadows made it look slightly different, like it had moved or something. Which was stupid, obviously. Cameras don't move by themselves. But I couldn't shake the feeling that it was watching me somehow. Which makes no sense because it's just a piece of plastic with some film inside. But you ever get that feeling when you're alone that someone's looking at you? That's what it was like. I had trouble falling asleep that night. Every little sound in the building seemed louder than usual. Footsteps in the hallway, doors closing, the elevator making that weird grinding noise it always makes. And I kept thinking about that neat handwriting. How careful and precise it was. Like someone had practiced writing my name over and over until they got it just right. The next morning, I woke up and the first thing I saw was the camera, still sitting there on my nightstand exactly where I'd left it. In the daylight, it looked more normal. Just an old, disposable camera. Nothing scary about it. I got ready for work like usual, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. All day at the office, I kept wondering what could possibly be on those 27 pictures that someone wanted me to see so badly. Maybe it was someone's vacation photos and they got confused about the address. Maybe it was some art project from a college student. Maybe it was just someone playing a weird joke. But that night, when I got home, I made my decision. There's a CVS about 6 blocks from my apartment that still develops film. I'd seen the sign in their window. It would cost me maybe $15 to find out what was on there. And then I could either return the photos to whoever they belonged to, or just throw them away and forget about the whole thing. So I walked over there after dinner. It was getting dark, probably around 8:30 or 9. The CVS was almost empty except for one cashier and some guy buying energy drinks. I went to the photo counter and handed the camera to this teenage girl with purple hair. "How long for 1-hour photos?" I asked. She looked at the camera like she'd never seen one before. "Disposable?" Wow, these are like vintage now. We can probably have them ready tomorrow afternoon. We don't really do the 1 hour thing anymore unless it's digital. Tomorrow's fine, I said. I filled out the little form with my name and phone number. The girl seemed nice enough, kept making small talk about how her mom used to use cameras like this when she was little. Walking home, I felt lighter somehow, like I'd done something I was supposed to do. The mystery would be solved tomorrow, and then I could get back to my normal life. Maybe I'd even have a funny story to tell people about the weird package I got. But that night was different. I kept waking up every hour or two, and each time I did, I found myself looking toward my bedroom window. It faces the parking lot behind my building. Nothing interesting to see usually, just cars and dumpsters and the back of the building across the alley. But for some reason, I kept feeling like someone might be out there, looking up at my window. I got up around 3 in the morning and peeked through the blinds, but the parking lot was empty except for the usual cars, streetlight casting long shadows between them, nothing moving. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling, and I realized that ever since I'd gotten that package, I'd been more aware of my windows. During the day, when I was getting dressed or making coffee or just sitting on the couch, I'd catch myself glancing at them, like part of my brain was constantly checking to make sure no one was watching, which was ridiculous, of course. I'm on the 3rd floor. Who would be watching me through my windows, and why? But as I lay there in bed, staring at the ceiling, I couldn't help thinking about that camera again, about someone taking 27 pictures of something, about how they'd written my name so carefully with my middle initial that I never use, about how they'd said thank you like they knew I would develop the film, like they were counting on it. The next day dragged by so slowly I thought I was going to lose my mind. I kept checking my phone, waiting for CVS to call and tell me the photos were ready. Every time it rang, my heart would jump, but it was always just work stuff or spam calls. Finally, around 4:30, my phone buzzed with a text. Photos ready for pickup. CVS. I left work early, telling my boss I had a dentist appointment. The same purple-haired girl was working the photo counter when I got there. "Oh hey, disposable camera guy," she said with a smile. "Your photos came out really good actually. Some of them are a little dark, but you can see everything clearly." She handed me a yellow envelope with my name written on it in black marker, different handwriting this time. Just the CVS employee's casual scrawl, but seeing my name written out again made my stomach clench for some reason. "That'll be $14.50, she said. I paid and walked outside before opening the envelope. I don't know why. I just wanted to be alone when I saw whatever was inside. There was a bench outside the CVS under a streetlight, so I sat down and carefully opened the envelope. 27 photographs, 4x6 prints, glossy finish. I pulled them out slowly, my hands shaking a little bit. The first photo made me drop the whole stack. It was my apartment building, taken at night from across the street. You could see the front entrance, the stairs leading up to the 2nd and 3rd floors, and my window. The light was on inside, and through the blinds you could just barely make out a figure moving around. Me. Someone had taken a picture of me in my apartment from outside without me knowing. I picked up the scattered photos with trembling hands and looked at the second one. Same building, different angle. This time from the parking lot behind the building, looking up at my bedroom window. The blinds were open and you could see me lying on my bed, watching TV. The 3rd photo, the 4th, the 5th, they were all of my apartment, all taken at night, all showing me inside, going about my normal routine, cooking dinner, sitting on the couch, standing at the kitchen window, getting undressed for bed. Someone had been watching me. For how long? How many nights had they been out there, taking pictures of me through my windows, and I had no idea. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the photos. I looked around the parking lot, suddenly paranoid that whoever had taken these pictures was watching me right now. But it was just normal people going in and out of the CVS, nobody paying any attention to me. I forced myself to look through the rest of the photos. They were all the same, different nights, different angles, but always me, always my apartment, always taken from outside, in the dark, like some kind of surveillance. The last photo was different though. It wasn't of my building at all. It was just a close-up of my front door, my apartment number clearly visible, and tucked under the door was a brown paper package. The same package I'd found 2 days ago. Whoever had been taking these pictures, they were the ones who had sent me the camera. They wanted me to see what they'd been doing. They wanted me to know that they'd been watching me. But why? I sat on that bench outside CVS until it got dark, staring at those 27 photographs and trying to make sense of what was happening to me. People walked by, cars drove past, life went on normally around me. But I felt like I was in some kind of nightmare. Someone had been stalking me. Someone knew where I lived, knew my schedule, knew me well enough to get my full name with the middle initial I never use. And now they wanted me to know about it. The question that kept running through my mind over and over was, what did they want from me? And were they still out there, watching, waiting to see how I would react to their little gift? As I finally stood up to walk home, clutching those photos in my sweaty hands, I realized something that made my blood run cold. In every single picture, every single one, the timestamp on the camera showed they had been taken over the past 3 weeks. The same 3 weeks I'd been living in that apartment, completely unaware that someone was documenting my every move. Someone who was still out there. Someone who might be watching me right now. I didn't sleep at all that night. How could I? I spread all 27 photos across my kitchen table and just stared at them. Under the bright fluorescent light, they looked even worse somehow. More real, more invasive. The first few were taken from across the street. Maybe from that little park area near the bus stop. You know, the one with the broken bench and the dying tree? I walk past it every day on my way to work. Never thought twice about it. But now I realized someone could easily hide behind that tree at night. Watch my building. Watch me. Photo number 4 showed me making dinner. I remembered that night. It was last Thursday, I think. I'd made spaghetti and meatballs, stood at the stove stirring the sauce. In the picture, you could see me through the kitchen window, completely oblivious, just going about my normal routine while someone sat outside in the dark, watching, taking pictures. The thought made my stomach turn. Photo number 7. That one really got to me. It showed me sitting on my couch in my underwear, watching Netflix. I always do that after work. Come home, strip down to my boxers and a t-shirt and just vegetate in front of the TV for a couple hours. It's my routine, my private time to relax. But it wasn't private, was it? Someone else knew about my routine. Someone else had been watching me in my most vulnerable moments. I picked up photo number 12 and held it closer to the lamp. This one was taken from the parking lot behind my building. You could tell because of the angle. My bedroom window was lit up, and through the blinds, you could see me getting undressed for bed. The timestamp said 11:47 p.m. That's when it hit me. Whoever took these pictures knew my schedule. They knew when I got home from work, when I ate dinner, when I went to bed. They'd been studying me, learning my patterns. But why? I examined each photo more carefully, looking for clues. In photo number 16, you could just barely see a reflection in my living room window. It looked like a car parked across the street, dark-colored, maybe black or dark blue. I couldn't make out the license plate or anything, but it was definitely there. Photo number 19 was different. It was taken much closer, from right outside my building, I think. You could see into my kitchen window perfectly, me washing dishes at the sink. The detail was incredible. You could even see the soap bubbles on the plates. That meant whoever took it had to be standing right there, maybe 10 feet from my front door. close enough that if I'd looked outside at the right moment, I would have seen them. The thought made my hands shake. I kept looking through them, over and over, trying to piece together some kind of timeline. The timestamps showed they were taken on different nights: Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. No pattern that I could figure out, but always between 9 p.m. and midnight. Always when I was home, alone, going about my normal evening routine. Photo number 23 showed something that made my blood run cold. It was my bedroom window again, but this time I was asleep. You could see me lying in bed, completely unconscious and vulnerable. The person taking this picture had stood outside my window while I slept, watching me, and I never knew. How long had they been out there? Minutes? Hours? The last few photos were the worst. Number 25 showed me standing at my bathroom window. I'd been brushing my teeth, getting ready for bed. The angle meant they had to be in the alley behind my building, the narrow space between my building and the one next to it. It's dark back there, full of trash cans and broken concrete. Anyone could hide back there, and no one would see them. Photo number 26 was taken from the front of the building again, but much closer this time. You could see my living room window clearly, and me sitting at my kitchen table, eating cereal for dinner. I remember that night. I'd been too tired to cook anything real, but in the corner of the photo, barely visible, there was something else, a shadow, like someone else had been there when the picture was taken. Another person, maybe. Or maybe it was just a trick of the light. I couldn't tell for sure. And then there was the last photo, number 27, the one that showed the package under my door. But looking at it now, under the bright kitchen light, I noticed something I'd missed before. The timestamp on this photo was from 2 days ago, the same day I'd found the package, which meant whoever took it had delivered the package, then waited around to photograph it sitting there under my door. They'd wanted to document the moment they made contact with me. I pushed back from the table and started pacing around my apartment. This was insane, completely insane. Someone had been stalking me for weeks, documenting my every move, and I'd been completely clueless. And now they'd sent me the evidence. Why? What did they want from me? I went to my living room window and peeked through the blinds. The street looked normal. A few cars parked along the curb, the park across the way empty except for that broken bench. But now I found myself studying every shadow, every dark spot where someone could hide. Were they out there right now, watching me look through these photos, taking more pictures of me discovering their surveillance? The thought made me step back from the window quickly. I grabbed my phone and almost called the police. But what would I tell them? That someone had been taking pictures of me from public property? That wasn't illegal, was it? I mean, creepy as hell, but technically not breaking any laws. And besides, what if calling the police made things worse? What if whoever was doing this got angry about me involving the authorities? I looked at the photos again, spread across my kitchen table like some kind of twisted art project. 27 pictures of my life. My private moments, taken without my knowledge or consent. Someone out there knew me better than I knew myself. They knew my habits, my schedule, my routines. They'd been watching me for weeks, and they wanted me to know about it. The question that kept echoing in my mind was simple but terrifying. What were they planning to do next? I gathered up all the photos and put them back in the yellow envelope. My hands were still shaking. Outside, I could hear the normal sounds of the building, people coming home from work, TV shows playing, someone's dog barking. Normal life, while mine had just been turned completely upside down. I deadbolted my front door and checked that all my windows were locked. Then I closed every blind and curtain in the apartment. For the first time in 2 years of living here, I didn't feel safe in my own home. The next few days were hell, pure hell. I couldn't concentrate at work, kept checking my phone every 5 minutes, looking at the photos I'd saved to my camera roll. My boss asked me twice if I was feeling okay. I just told him I had a headache. which wasn't really a lie. I hadn't slept more than an hour or two each night since I got those pictures developed. Every time I closed my eyes, I kept seeing that image of me sleeping. Someone standing outside my bedroom window in the dark, watching me, taking pictures of me while I was completely helpless. I started doing things differently. Little things at first, like closing my blinds before I got home from work instead of leaving them open like I used to. And I stopped walking around in my underwear, kept my clothes on even when I was just lounging around watching TV. But it wasn't enough. Nothing felt like enough. On Thursday night, I was making dinner, just heating up some leftover Chinese food in the microwave, when I heard something outside. A small sound, like a branch breaking or maybe a can being kicked. I froze, standing there in my kitchen with a container of lo mein in my hands. The sound came from behind the building, from that alley where photo number 25 had been taken. I turned off all the lights in my apartment and crept to the kitchen window. Slowly, very slowly, I lifted one slat of the blind and peeked outside. At first, I didn't see anything, just the usual mess of trash cans and broken concrete. But then, movement. A shadow shifting between the dumpsters. Too big to be a cat, too deliberate to be the wind. Someone was back there. My heart started pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I grabbed my phone and almost called 911. But then the shadow moved again, and I realized it was just Mrs. Chen from 3B taking out her garbage. She walked right under the security light and I could see her clearly. Gray hair in curlers, pink bathrobe, dragging one of those wheeled trash bags. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. Just Mrs. Chen. Nothing scary, nothing threatening. But that's when I noticed something else. As Mrs. Chen walked back toward the building, the security light stayed on. Motion activated. And in that circle of light, I could see footprints in the dirt near the dumpsters. Fresh footprints. Definitely not Mrs. Chen's tiny old lady shoes. Someone else had been back there recently. Someone with bigger feet. Work boots, maybe. I let the blind snap shut and backed away from the window. My appetite was completely gone. I put the Chinese food back in the fridge and just sat on my couch in the dark, thinking. Friday morning, I decided to do something I'd never done before. Instead of leaving for work at my usual time, 7:30 on the dot, I left 20 minutes early, and instead of walking straight to the bus stop like always, I took a detour through that little park across from my building. I wanted to see if there were any signs, any evidence that someone had been using it as a lookout point. The park was mostly dead grass and broken pavement, with that one scraggly tree I'd noticed in the photos. But when I got closer to the tree, I found something that made my stomach drop. Cigarette butts. A lot of them. All the same brand. Marlboro Reds. They were scattered around the base of the tree like someone had been standing there for hours. Multiple nights. Smoking and watching, and they were all relatively fresh. No rain damage, no fading. Some of them still had that fresh tobacco smell. I looked up from the cigarette butts toward my building, toward my windows. The angle was perfect. Someone could stand right here, behind this tree, and see directly into my apartment. They could watch me cook dinner, watch me get ready for bed, watch me do everything I thought was private. That's when I noticed something else. Carved into the bark of the tree, about eye level, were two initials. JM. My initials. J. Michael Rodriguez. Someone had carved my initials into the tree they'd been using to spy on me. I ran. I don't care how that sounds. I just ran, back to my building, up the stairs, into my apartment. I locked the door and immediately called in sick to work. There was no way I could sit in an office all day knowing that someone had been claiming me somehow, marking their territory. The rest of Friday, I stayed inside with all the blinds closed. I ordered pizza for dinner. Didn't want to stand in the kitchen where someone might see me through the window. The delivery guy had to knock 3 times before I worked up the courage to answer the door. That night, I decided to test something. Around 10 p.m., I turned on every light in my apartment and opened all the blinds. Then I sat in my living room, right in front of the big window, and waited. If someone was still watching me, if they were still out there, they'd see this as an opportunity, a perfect shot. I sat there for 2 hours, pretending to read a magazine but actually watching the reflections in the window, looking for any sign of movement outside, any hint that I was being observed. At first, nothing, just normal street sounds, cars passing, someone's TV too loud, the building settling. But around midnight, I saw it, a small flash of light from across the street, near that tree, like someone had lit a cigarette, or maybe taken a picture with a flash. My blood went cold. I immediately turned off all the lights and closed the blinds, but it was too late. If someone was out there, they'd seen me. They knew I was aware of them now, and that changed everything. I spent the rest of the night sitting in my dark apartment, wondering what would happen next. The photos had been a message, a way of letting me know I was being watched. But now that I knew, now that I'd acknowledged their presence, what was the next step in whatever sick game they were playing? I had a feeling I was about to find out. Saturday morning, I woke up to find something that confirmed my worst fears. Slipped under my door while I slept was a single piece of paper, folded neatly in half. In that same careful handwriting from before, it said, "I know you saw me. Good, we need to talk." And at the bottom, in different ink, like it had been added later, were 8 words that made my hands shake. "Tonight, midnight, the tree, come alone, Michael." So, I live in this small studio apartment in downtown. It's one of those old buildings, you know, built in the 1940s or something. The kind with thin walls, creaky floors, and radiators that make weird noises at night. But it's cheap, and for someone like me who works at a call center making barely above minimum wage, cheap is all I can afford. The apartment is tiny, like really tiny. When I tell people it's a studio, they picture something decent-sized. But this place is maybe 300 square feet, if that. The kitchen is basically just a counter with a hot plate and a mini fridge. The bathroom is so small I have to step sideways to get around the toilet. And the main room, well, it fits my bed, a small desk, and not much else. But here's the thing about small spaces. You get to know every inch of them. Every crack in the wall, every stain on the carpet, every shadow that gets cast when the light hits just right. After living somewhere for 8 months like I have, you notice when things are different. It started about 3 weeks ago. I was getting ready for work, running late like always. I'm not a morning person, never have been. I usually stumble around in a half-awake haze until I've had at least 2 cups of coffee. So I'm standing at the bathroom sink, shaving with this cheap electric razor I got from the dollar store, looking in the mirror that's mounted on the medicine cabinet. The mirror isn't great. It's one of those old ones where the silver backing is starting to peel around the edges, so you get these dark spots that make your reflection look weird. But it works, mostly. So I'm shaving, half asleep, just going through the motions, when I see something move behind me in the reflection. It was quick. Just a glimpse, really, like someone walking past. A dark shape, human-sized, moving from left to right across the background of the mirror. I froze. Just completely stopped what I was doing. The razor was still buzzing in my hand, but I wasn't moving. I was staring at the mirror, at the reflection of my tiny bathroom with the shower curtain behind me, trying to process what I'd just seen. Then I turned around. Nothing. The bathroom door was closed, had been closed the whole time, and behind me was just the bathtub with its yellowed shower curtain, the same as always. No one there. No way anyone could have been there. I stood there for maybe 30 seconds, just looking around. The bathroom is so small that if someone was in there with me, I would definitely know. There's literally nowhere to hide. I even pulled back the shower curtain, just to be sure. Empty tub, same rust stains I see every day. I told myself I was just tired. I'd been pulling double shifts at work, trying to save up some money. Sleep deprivation can make you see things, right? That's what I figured. Just my brain playing tricks on me. But the weird thing was, I wasn't scared. Not yet. It was more like confusion. Like when you're sure you put your keys in one place, but then you find them somewhere else, and you spend a few minutes just trying to figure out how that happened. I finished shaving and went to work. Didn't think about it much during the day. Work keeps you busy, you know? Answering calls, dealing with angry customers who want to cancel their cable or complain about their internet. It's mind-numbing, but it keeps your thoughts occupied. But that night, as I was getting ready for bed, I found myself looking at that bathroom mirror differently. I kept glancing at it out of the corner of my eye, like I was expecting to see something again. But nothing happened. The next few days were normal. I went to work, came home, watched Netflix, went to bed, the usual routine. I almost forgot about the mirror thing entirely, until it happened again. This time, it was evening. I was brushing my teeth before bed, and there it was again in the reflection. The same dark shape moving behind me, but this time I was ready for it. I spun around immediately, toothbrush still in my mouth. Nothing. Door was still closed. Shower curtain hadn't moved, but I could swear I'd seen something. Someone. I opened the bathroom door and looked out into the main room. Everything was exactly as I'd left it. My laptop was on the desk, still playing some YouTube video I'd been watching. The front door was locked, deadbolt engaged, chain latched. The windows. Well, I'm on the 4th floor, and the windows don't even open all the way because of these security stops the landlord installed. I started to feel uneasy for the first time. Not scared exactly, but unsettled. Like that feeling you get when you think someone's watching you, but you turn around and no one's there. I didn't sleep well that night. I kept thinking about what I'd seen, or thought I'd seen. In the dark, lying in bed, it seemed more real somehow, more significant. I found myself listening to every little sound in the building. The footsteps from the apartment above, the hum of the refrigerator, the occasional car passing by on the street below. Old buildings make a lot of noise at night. Pipes expanding and contracting, wood settling, the building shifting slightly as the temperature changes. I'd gotten used to most of it, but that night every sound seemed louder, more ominous. The third time it happened, I was ready with a plan. I was in the bathroom again, washing my face before work. I'd positioned myself so I could see the mirror clearly while still being able to turn around quickly. I was watching, waiting, and then there it was, the dark shape moving across the background of the reflection. But this time, instead of turning around immediately, I kept watching the mirror. I watched as the shape paused, seeming to stop just outside the frame of the reflection. It felt like someone was standing right behind me, close enough that I should be able to feel their breath on the back of my neck. But when I turned around, nothing was there. That's when I started to get really worried. 3 times isn't a coincidence. 3 times means something is actually happening, even if I can't figure out what. I called in sick to work that day. I know, I can't afford to miss work, but I needed to understand what was going on. I spent the entire day in that apartment, watching the bathroom mirror, trying to catch whatever it was in the act. But nothing happened during the day. It was only in the early morning or late evening, when the light in the apartment was dim, that I'd see the shape. I started keeping a notebook, writing down each time it happened, the date, the time, what I was doing, what exactly I saw. I thought maybe if I could find a pattern, I could figure out what was causing it. Over the next week, it happened 6 more times, always in the bathroom, always in the mirror, always the same dark shape moving behind me. And always, when I turned around, nothing there. I started taking pictures of the bathroom with my phone, thinking maybe the camera would catch something my eyes missed, but the photos just showed my normal empty bathroom. Nothing unusual. I even set up my laptop to record video while I was in the bathroom. Hours of footage of me brushing my teeth, shaving, washing my face, and in every video where I thought I'd seen something, there was nothing there. Just me, alone in the bathroom, suddenly spinning around for no apparent reason. Watching those videos was disturbing. Seeing myself react to something that wasn't there, at least not in the recording, it made me question my own sanity. But here's the thing that really got to me. In one of the videos, you can see the exact moment when I see the shape in the mirror. I'm brushing my teeth and suddenly I stop. My eyes go wide and I'm staring at the mirror with this look of, I don't know, shock, fear, and then I spin around, toothbrush still in my mouth, looking for whatever I'd seen. But in the video, there's nothing there. The mirror just shows the reflection of the bathroom, same as always. So either I'm having some kind of visual hallucinations, or, well, I don't know what the alternative is. Something that only I can see? Something that doesn't show up on camera? I started researching online. Forums about hallucinations, medical websites, anything that might explain what was happening to me. Most of what I found talked about stress, lack of sleep, certain medications, but I wasn't on any medications. And while I was stressed about money like always, it wasn't anything unusual. I even made an appointment with a doctor, but the earliest they could see me was 3 weeks out. The healthcare system in this city is a joke. Meanwhile, the sightings kept happening. Almost every day now, always the same thing. Dark shape in the mirror, gone when I turned around. But they were lasting longer. At first, it was just a quick glimpse, over in a second. But now I could watch the shape for several seconds before it disappeared. It was like whatever it was getting bolder, more confident. And I started to notice details. The shape was definitely human-sized and human-shaped. It moved like a person walking, not floating or gliding or anything weird like that. It was just a person walking behind me, visible only in the reflection. But here's what really freaked me out. One morning I was shaving and I saw the shape again, but this time, instead of just walking past, it stopped. In the reflection, I could see this dark figure standing directly behind me. I held my breath, afraid to move. In the mirror, it looked like someone was standing so close behind me that we were almost touching. I should have been able to feel them, should have been able to hear them breathing. But there was nothing, just the normal sounds of the building, the hum of the bathroom fan, the distant traffic outside. I stood there for what felt like forever, just watching this dark shape in the reflection. It wasn't moving, just standing there. And even though I couldn't make out any features, I had the distinct impression that it was watching me too. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I spun around, expecting... I don't know what I was expecting. But there was nothing there, just my empty bathroom. When I looked back at the mirror, the shape was gone. That night, I barely slept at all. Every time I closed my eyes, I kept thinking about that dark figure standing behind me, watching me. I kept getting up to check the locks on my door, to look around the apartment, to make sure I was alone. I was starting to feel paranoid. Not just about the mirror thing, but about everything. I'd catch myself looking over my shoulder when I was walking down the street. I'd double-check that my apartment door was locked multiple times before going to bed. I'd find myself listening for footsteps in the hallway, wondering if someone was standing outside my door. The rational part of my brain kept trying to convince me that I was just stressed, that the whole thing was in my head. But the more it happened, the more real it felt. And the more real it felt, the more scared I became. Because if it wasn't in my head, if there really was someone or something there, then what did that mean? How could someone be behind me, close enough to see in the mirror, but not actually there when I turned around? I started avoiding the bathroom as much as possible. I'd brush my teeth quickly without looking in the mirror. I'd shave at the kitchen sink instead, using a small handheld mirror. But even then, I'd sometimes catch glimpses in the reflection of the toaster or the window or any other reflective surface in the apartment. It was following me. Whatever it wasn't limited to just the bathroom mirror. And that's when I realized I needed to do something about it. I couldn't keep living like this, jumping at shadows, afraid of my own reflection. So I made a decision. I was going to move that mirror and see what was behind it. I had no idea what I would find. So I said I was going to move that mirror. Well, I did, and I really wish I hadn't. It took me 3 days to work up the courage. 3 days of barely sleeping, of jumping every time I saw my own reflection, of feeling like someone was constantly watching me. I kept telling myself I was being ridiculous, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong. The mirror was attached to the medicine cabinet with these old screws, the kind that had been painted over so many times you could barely see the heads. I had to buy a screwdriver from the dollar store. Yeah, I know, probably should have had one already, but I'm not exactly handy with tools. I started on a Saturday morning. Figured if I was going to lose my mind completely, at least I wouldn't have to miss work. I'd been putting this off for days, making excuses, telling myself I should clean the apartment first, or that I should wait until I had better lighting, or that maybe I should just call the landlord instead. But Friday night, I saw the shape again. This time, it didn't just walk past, didn't just stand there. This time, it waved at me. I'm not kidding. I was brushing my teeth, and in the reflection, I saw this dark figure raise its hand and wave, like it was saying hello or goodbye. I don't know which was worse. That's when I knew I had to do something. Whatever was happening, it was getting worse, more interactive, and I couldn't live like that anymore. So, Saturday morning, I got my cheap screwdriver and started working on those painted-over screws. It took forever. My hands were shaking, and I kept having to stop and look around, convinced that someone was behind me. But eventually, I got the first screw out, then the second, then the third. The medicine cabinet was heavier than I expected. When the last screw came out, the whole thing almost fell on me. I managed to catch it, barely, and set it down on the bathroom floor. And that's when I saw it. There was a hole in the wall, not a small hole. I mean, it was about the size of a fist, maybe a little bigger, perfectly round, like someone had drilled it out. The edges were smooth, not jagged like you'd expect if someone had just punched through the drywall. I stood there for a minute, just staring at it. My first thought was, okay, that's weird, but maybe it's just an old pipe hole or something. Old buildings have weird plumbing, right? Maybe they moved a pipe and never bothered to patch the wall properly. But then I got my phone and turned on the flashlight app. I shined it into the hole, expecting to see the back wall of the building, or maybe some pipes or insulation, or I don't know, something normal. Instead, I saw nothing, just darkness, empty space. I pressed my face closer to the wall, trying to get a better angle with the phone light. The hole went back further than it should have, way further. I could see maybe 3 or 4 feet into it before the light just disappeared into black. But here's the thing that really confused me. According to the building layout, according to what I thought I knew about this place, there shouldn't be any space behind that wall. The apartment next to mine should be right there. Mrs. Chen lives in 4B, and her place shares a wall with my bathroom. I knocked on the wall around the hole, solid drywall like normal. But through the hole, nothing. Just empty air. I tried to stick my arm through, to feel around inside. The space was definitely there, definitely real. I could feel air moving, like there was ventilation somewhere, but I couldn't reach anything. No walls, no pipes, nothing. That's when I started to panic a little, because this didn't make sense. Buildings don't just have random empty spaces in their walls, especially not spaces big enough to... Wait. Big enough for someone to stand in. The thought hit me like a punch to the stomach. What if someone was actually there? What if the dark shape I'd been seeing wasn't a hallucination at all? What if there was actually someone behind that wall, watching me through this hole? I yanked my arm back out so fast I scraped it on the edge of the hole. I was breathing hard, my heart pounding. I kept staring at that dark opening, expecting. I don't know, expecting a face to appear or a hand to reach out. But nothing happened, just silence and darkness. I needed to know more. I needed to understand what I was looking at, so I did something probably stupid. I got a flashlight from my kitchen drawer, a real one, not just my phone, and I shined it into that hole as far as it would reach. What I saw made my blood run cold. It wasn't just empty space. There were things in there. Not furniture exactly, but objects. I could see what looked like pieces of wood, maybe old boards or something. And there was something that might have been fabric hanging from somewhere I couldn't see. But the worst part was the floor, because there was a floor in there, maybe 4 feet down from the hole. And on that floor, there were marks, scuff marks, like someone had been walking around recently. Someone had been in there. Someone was maybe still in there. I turned off the flashlight and backed away from the wall. I was shaking now, really shaking. My mind was racing, trying to process what I'd just seen. There was a hidden room behind my bathroom wall. Someone had access to it, and they'd been watching me for weeks through that hole. That's when I heard it. A sound from inside the wall. Not loud, just a soft shuffling, like someone trying to move quietly, but not quite succeeding. I grabbed my phone and ran out of the bathroom, slamming the door behind me. I sat on my bed, staring at that closed door, listening. The shuffling sound came again, definitely from inside the wall. Someone was in there, right now, watching my bathroom door, probably wondering why I'd discovered their little peephole. And I had no idea what to do about it. I didn't sleep at all that night. I just sat on my bed, staring at the bathroom door, listening for any sound from inside the wall. Every creak, every settling noise the building made. I was convinced it was someone moving around in that hidden space. Around 3 a.m., I heard it again. That soft, shuffling sound. Like someone shifting their weight, trying to get comfortable in a cramped space. I called the police. I know it sounds crazy. Officer, there's someone living in my wall. But I didn't know what else to do. I was scared, confused, and I needed help. The cop who came out was this older guy, maybe in his 50s, Officer Martinez, according to his badge. He listened to my story with this expression on his face, like he'd heard it all before, you know? Like I was just another crazy person wasting his time. He looked at the hole behind where the mirror had been, shined his own flashlight into it, knocked on the walls. He was thorough, I'll give him that. Could be an old utility access, he said finally. These buildings from the 40s, they got weird layouts sometimes. Probably just mice you're hearing. Mice, right. He took a report anyway, said he'd have someone from the building department come check it out. But I could tell he thought I was nuts, just another paranoid tenant in a crappy apartment building. After he left, I felt stupid and more alone than before. Maybe I was losing my mind. Maybe it really was just mice, or the building settling, or my imagination running wild from too much stress and not enough sleep. But then Monday came, and I had to go back to work. I couldn't afford to take any more sick days. So I got ready like normal. Well, as normal as I could with a gaping hole in my bathroom wall. I'd taped a piece of cardboard over the hole. It wasn't much, but it made me feel slightly better, like putting a band-aid on a bullet wound. At work, I couldn't concentrate. I kept thinking about that space behind the wall, about the scuff marks on the floor, about the shuffling sounds. During my lunch break, I decided to do some research. I went to the city planning office. Yeah, I know, not exactly exciting, but I needed to see the building plans for my apartment complex. I needed to understand the layout, to figure out if that space was supposed to be there. The woman at the counter was helpful enough. She pulled up the original blueprints from 1947 when the building was constructed. And that's when things got interesting. According to the plans, there shouldn't be any space behind my bathroom wall. The building was designed with apartments 4A and 4B sharing that wall directly. No gap, no utility access, nothing. But there was something else. The blueprints showed that the building had been modified in 1963. Someone had submitted plans for interior renovations to several units, including mine. The modifications created small storage spaces between some of the apartments. Officially, they were listed as utility closets and maintenance access points. But looking at the updated blueprints, these weren't closets. They were rooms, small rooms, accessible through panels that could be removed from the inside. Someone had designed secret spaces into this building on purpose. I asked the clerk if she had any records of who had requested these modifications. She disappeared into the back room for 20 minutes, then came back with a folder full of old permits and applications. The modifications had been requested by the building's owner at the time, a man named Harold Voss. But here's the creepy part. The applications were signed by multiple tenants as well, like they had agreed to the changes, had wanted them. Why would tenants want secret rooms built into their apartments? I took pictures of everything with my phone. The original blueprints, the modification plans, the permits. I needed to study this more carefully at home. But when I got back to my apartment that evening, something had changed. The cardboard I'd taped over the hole, it was gone. Not fallen down, not torn off. Gone. Like someone had carefully removed it from the inside. And there was something new on my bathroom counter, a piece of paper folded in half. With shaking hands, I opened it. In pencil, written in careful, old-fashioned handwriting, it said, "We've been waiting for you to find us." I dropped the paper like it was on fire. My heart was pounding so hard I thought I might pass out. I grabbed my phone, ready to call the police again. But then I heard something that stopped me cold. Voices, multiple voices coming from inside the wall, whispering. I couldn't make out the words, but there were definitely people in there. More than one person. They were having a conversation, trying to keep quiet, but not quiet enough. I pressed my ear against the wall next to the hole. The voices stopped immediately, like they knew I was listening. Then, after a few seconds of silence, I heard something that made my skin crawl. Laughter, soft, muffled laughter, like they thought this was funny, like they were enjoying this. I backed away from the wall, grabbed my keys and wallet, and got the hell out of that apartment. I went to a 24-hour diner and sat there until morning, drinking coffee and trying to figure out what to do. Because now I knew for sure. There were people living in the walls of my building, people who had been watching me, studying me, waiting for me to discover them. And somehow, I got the feeling this was just the beginning. When I finally went back to my apartment the next morning, there was another note waiting for me. This one said, "Don't tell anyone else, we just want to be friends." But the handwriting was different, newer, like it had been written by someone much younger. How many of them were there?